I'm Brandy Champeau with Exploring Expression. And thank you for having me as part of the Homeschooling with Excellence event. And I want to get started. So, what I want to talk about today is cross curricular learning, how to do more with less. And what do I mean by less? I mean less time, less resources. There's so much that we want our children to learn that honestly, there just aren't enough hours in the day. Have you ever had that? I mean, I want my children to learn math and language arts and science, of course, and social studies. But when I started this journey, I also wanted them to learn French and Latin and chess and music and gym and art and all of these cooking and life skills and economics. But if you spend a few minutes on each one every day, there's not going to be enough time. There's just not. There's not enough time and there's not enough meat. So this is what I'm going to talk about. But I want to give you a little bit of history first into my homeschooling journey and how I got to where I am today. So again, like I said, my name is Brandy Champeau. I have 3 children. I have my eldest, Samantha my goodness, is 21. My eldest is 21, in college, working. Now she homeschooled a brief period of time, but then she graduated from public school. So her journey looked like this. It went public school, then homeschool for about a year-ish, 6 months a year, and then public school. Okay. My middle child, his name is Joshua, and he's 17. He has autism, so he is a special education. And his journey was back and forth. He did special ed school, and then he did some homeschool, and then he did some regular school. He went to a hospital for a while, so he had some hospitalization school, and then a special school for special needs, and then homeschool for a bit, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, because his needs and my needs changed. My youngest child, his name is Daniel, and he is 8. And his journey has gone like this. He went homeschool with a little bit of daycare in there. And then he went public school for just like a heartbeat, just a heartbeat. And then back to homeschool, and he's homeschooled now. So if that was hard to keep up, of my 3 children right now, as of this moment, I'm currently homeschooling one of them. I'm homeschooling my youngest. My middle child is in a private school that focuses on special education. And then my older daughter has graduated and she's in college. As for me, all along this pathway, I have been a single mother. And so my decisions on when to homeschool, if to homeschool, how to homeschool, right? All of those decisions, I would love to say they were all because of the emotional and educational well-being of my children. We would all love to say that, right? We want what's best for our children. We want our children to be learners. I talk so much in my business about that we want to raise students and not learners. And I explain it like this. Students are like baby birds. They're just sitting there with their mouths open, waiting for somebody, maybe your parent, maybe a teacher, maybe a friend, to just drop pearls of knowledge into their eagerly awaiting throats, right? Then maybe they ingest and maybe they don't. But a learner, and if the person feeding them knowledge goes away, what happens to a baby bird? What happens to a baby bird if the parent goes away? Do they thrive? No, they don't. They wither, they starve, right? And that's not what we want for our children. We want our children to be learners. Learners are explorers. They understand how to find the answers. They understand how to ask the questions and then find the answers to make themselves resilient in today's world. Because that's what our children need to be in today's world. They need to be resilient. So, it's a lovely sentiment. We want to raise learners. But how do you do that when you may be homeschooling forever? You may be homeschooling for a season. You may be homeschooling suddenly. How many of us went through COVID and suddenly found ourselves homeschooling? And then now that COVID I'm not going to say it's wrapping up, but I'm going to say The new normal has shifted. And so now we're faced with this decision. Should I send my child back to school? Would they be better there? Now that I've got it, should I continue it? Or what if I want to continue to do virtual school, but the virtual school really is nothing like in-classroom experience? So how do I supplement that? Right? So this is what I'm going to talk about today. No matter what your situation and why you're homeschooling now, you are, and congratulations, and it's fantastic, and you're doing an okay job. You're doing fine, whatever you're doing. You're building a learner, you're raising a learner. But sometimes we need a little help, right? Because as a single mother, like I said, the choices on whether or not to homeschool my children were not always mine. You know, when my youngest son aged out of daycare, I sent him to public school. Why? I couldn't afford a sitter. Simple facts, right? But did that release me of my responsibility of homeschooling my child? No, because there's stuff I want my child to know. However, when he came back from school, the last thing he wanted to do was sit and read a textbook. So I needed to figure out in the minimum time that we had, and now that he's homeschooled now full time, does that make our time more? Does that mean suddenly we have hours and hours and hours to read textbooks? No. For one, he's not going to sit there through it. And if any of you out there have active children, trust me, they're not going to sit there through it. So we have to make the best use of the resources we have. And the way I have done that, and really what my company specializes in, is project-based and cross-curricular learning. Unit studies, project studies, cross-curricular learning, right? And what that is it's taking a single subject. For example, right now, we are studying, we started reading Percy Jackson, right? And we're reading Percy Jackson, and of all the books, Daniel absolutely loved Percy Jackson and loved the whole idea of it. To the point that he really no longer wanted to talk about the 13 colonies. He wanted to talk about Percy Jackson and Greek gods and Zeus and Poseidon and Hermes and all of those and Olympus. And I went, okay, well, you still have to learn math, right? We still have to learn language arts. We still have to learn how to write. We still have to read. We still have to do science. But if all my child wants to talk about is Percy Jackson, how do I capitalize on that? How do I use that topic to teach him all of the things that he needs to know? So we do a lot with unit studies in my homeschool, and so I took my my unit study planning guide that we have, and I started filling that out for Percy Jackson and Greek myths. And we began to read Greek mythology. And then we read other mythologies, and we talked about the difference between the Greeks' ideas and other ideas. And we started talking about how the Greeks governed themselves, that original democracy, right? And we compared it to, remember the 13 colonies in the beginning of American history? We compared it to government, right? And we watched John Adams, the John Adams series, and we watched Hamilton, which we love, Hamilton. And we compared it to Greek society. And we learned to sew. We made a costume. So we decided, being October now, that we're going to be Poseidon. And if you go over to my Instagram or my Facebook page, you'll see, right? You'll see Daniel's costume and his development of Poseidon, where he learns how to sew and he reads the book. And now he's getting ready to write a report. So at the end of every unit study, let me see if I have one of these here. I take one of these little notebooks that I get from Amazon, right? These are fantastic if you have younger children, because they have the primary writing lines. And I got these from Amazon, and they're super cheap. They're like 10 for $10. And we make a report at the end of every one. For example, here's Here's Daniel's weather report that we did when we were studying weather. See that? And this serves a couple of things. A, it allows you to wrap up everything that we've learned. You've done science, you've done math. You know how much math there is in Greek gods and goddesses? Right? Especially when you're studying Poseidon, because, Percy Jackson is the son of Poseidon. We did so many water experiments. Right? It's taking the one topic and just expanding. And it involves a little bit of time and a little bit of effort on your part from the beginning, because you have to brainstorm. You have to say, okay, what does my child need to learn? And that's where that skills inventory starts. You start with the skills inventory and you sit down, and you should really be doing this periodically with your children, regardless of if they're homeschooled, private schooled, virtual schooled, hybrid schooled, whatever type of schooled. Because as a parent, it's our responsibility to know where our children are at. And just sit there and say, okay, how are they doing? How are they doing in math, and what do they need to do next? There's plenty of resources out there, what my first grader needs to know, or I live in Georgia, so there's Georgia state standards of what your child should be learning, right? Which is why, because remember I told you, this isn't about homeschooling instead of public schooling. This is about raising a learner. This is about educating our child wherever they're at. And in the state of Georgia, public school students at third grade begin a 3-year study of American history. And I thought, okay, that's a good starting point. For the next couple of years, I want to weave American history into what we're doing. But what happens when you don't have time to do that? That's where cross-curricular learning comes in, right? Because if we're studying weather, if we're studying Percy Jackson, if we're studying oceans, there's American history in there, if you want to look for it. This involves observation of your child, which as parents we're all doing anyway, right? And discovering how to use what they want to do. Maybe your child loves Minecraft. My older son really isn't interested in doing anything but Minecraft. And I talked about when we're doing last year, because he just started this private school. He just started this private school this year. So last year, what we did was a homeschool hybrid, right? And as we were doing our unit studies, because I don't have time to teach every child individually, I'm a single mother, I have a full-time job, I have a business, we're busy, right? So are you. You're busy, and we understand that. And it's okay. And so as a busy person, I didn't have time to do an entire day of school for a second grader and an entire day of school for a 10th grader. I just didn't. So we had to learn some things together, and that's okay. By using the cross-curricular approach, it enables you to teach things to your older students and younger students together. It enables you to say, okay, we're studying oceans. Let's say we're studying oceans. So younger child, why don't you go ahead and read the Dr. Seuss Ocean book and do a painting on the levels of the ocean, right? And I want you to know what the levels of the oceans are. An older child, while we're studying oceans, not only do you need to know the levels of the oceans, but you need to know the characteristics of creatures that could be found at each level, right? And perhaps, I'm a huge proponent of biographies. Let's throw in a biography of an oceanographer. Maybe Eugene Clark. I have a fantastic picture book it's called Shark Lady. It's the story of Eugene Clark. And I believe her name was Eugene Clark. Eugene something. And it's a picture book that both of them read, right? My older son read it to my younger son. And picture books are so useful for older children and for adults. Because it gave my older student a launch pad into a study of shark diving and oceanographers and Eugene Clark and all of these other topics. It became a launch pad. And then he took it to Minecraft because, All he cares about is Minecraft. And he built a civilization in and out of the ocean biome on Minecraft. And so figuring out how to utilize all of these subjects, figuring out how to say, okay, we're going on a trip, right? We recently took a month-long tour of the country. And we said, okay, we're going on a trip. How can I make this fun and educational? How can I put math in there, right? Well, easy. They can calculate the mileage. They can calculate the costs. They can calculate, they can figure out how much we're going each day and how much that's going to cost in fuel. They can do research on fuel prices. All of the different places that we visit, right? There's things that they can read and things that they can do and things that they can study. You can look up terms while we're studying Percy Jackson. Since one of the things I wanted was for my son to learn Spanish, we're looking up many of those words in Spanish. Water and sea and monster and tower and building and all of those things that you can use in Percy Jackson. And then I went on YouTube and I found some lovely synopsises and readings of chapters of Percy Jackson in Spanish. And we listened to them. Is that a formal Spanish curriculum? No. I don't have time to teach a formal Spanish curriculum. Is he learning Spanish? Yes. Is he retaining it? Some, right? You don't have to get from the start to the finish line in a straight line. Homeschool provides so many opportunities to let your child learn to love learning. That's such a key point. Let your child learn to love learning. Now, let me provide a caveat. Your child's not going to love everything. Like I said, I have an extremely active child who would rather be dancing. No matter what we're doing, Dana would rather be dancing. And while I put so many things to music, we've learned Greek letters through music. We've learned the presidents through music. We learned all our states through music. We're doing timeline music, all of these things to music. Unfortunately, I have yet to find a long division rap. I have yet to find a single music video that teaches long division. And if there's one out there, and if you find it, definitely tag me and let me know, because we're still looking. And so we have a math curriculum, and he sits and he does it, and he does not enjoy it. You have to pick your battles. You have to pick your battles. But I know there are some days that it just isn't happening. And that's okay too. Because the key here, and the key to cross-curricular learning, is that on the days when we don't get any primary, because we use primary mathematics, on the days we don't get any primary mathematics done, that's okay too. Because I know we played a math game. We do a ton of game schooling. And so I know we've played maybe, flipping fractions or dominoes or Smath. One of our absolute favorite games is Smath, which is like Scrabble math. And if you go over to my YouTube channel, I actually have a lot of these different game schooling things on videos on my YouTube channel over at Exploring Expression. I know we play those. And I know when we're studying Percy Jackson, we're talking about measurements. We're talking about metric versus American measurement systems and conversions, right? We're talking about currency. We're talking about what a drachma is. And how much do you think that was worth? Let's give it a value, right? And then let's start saying, well, how much American money is that? We built little tiny play drachmas and we set up a store, right? Who says you have to use a store with American currency? We set up a Greek mythology store. And so we learned math and we learned science and we learned history. And that's one of the things that Exploring Expression really excels in, is the unit studies and the curriculum that A, can be used by more than one child, or B, can cover more than one subject area. And we really focus at Exploring Expression, a little bit about my company, we focus on two things. We focus on exploring our world, helping our children to discover and nurture a love of the world that they live in and the people that live in it. And then we talk about healthy expression, which is kind of my personal baby, brought from my son Joshua and what I went through with him. And so we talk about healthy expression. And we have several children's books, not just my children's book. I have an entire collection. I've written 5 or 6 children's books that I've written unit studies to go with, cross-curricular unit studies, because that's what we do. But we also seek out and invite authors with very special children's books to come and consign with us. So over at exploringexpression.com, you can find our children's book, but you can also find other children's books from wonderful authors like Dr. Arlene Simon, who wrote Abby Invents, a fantastic series about engineering. Or we have a great series about philosophy by animals for young children, Animalosophy by Eric Kesselman. Or we have, so many books for children that help nurture healthy expression. So what ages, and not just for children, we have products for you. For example, we have this. It's the Household Management Binder. As a single parent, running an organized household is the only way to, to not have it all fall apart, right? And we've gone through several tornadoes. We've gone through heart failure. We've gone through several times when there was only a moment. Either somebody had to step into my life and run it, or we had to evacuate. And when we did, we were able to pick up this binder, and not only have everything we needed to continue our lives, but to continue our learning. Also in here, I keep records. As we're doing our unit study things, and we're filling out our unit study plan, that's our record. Because when they go back if they ever go back into public school, and this may not be your issue, but perhaps you live in a state where you have reporting requirements, and you have to keep those things. Well, all of that's kept inside this one binder. And actually, I have two. I have my household management binder, and I keep like the tire level of my homeschool stuff. And then I also have a homeschool binder, which I keep a little bit more stuff. We sell that at our store because it's so useful in keeping yourself organized, so that you can make sure that while you're following your child's love, you're still learning math, you're still learning science, you're still learning reading, you're still learning writing, and all of those things that your child is supposed to be learning. And so we have that for parents and for you. For older students, we have older students and adults. We have a great book that we wrote, Hearing is Not Enough, How to Be a Better Listener, that talks about how to improve your relationships by improving your listening skills, and all of the different ways and reasons why we listen to people. And then we go right on down that line. For the entire family, we just last year came out with a geography fact book series. Now we have one of these for every continent, and this covers every single country in the world. The 5 books cover every single country in the world. Because we saw a need. We saw, how many times have you looked for a geography curriculum or looked in it? And they went, here's the continent. Here's, if we're doing Africa, here's South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt. Right? And there's so many wonderful countries that were missed. And so that's what we do. We help you start the exploration. Now, we do not spoon feed our children, but we enable them to start their explorations. We enable them to start their explorations. And that's the key to what we do. Because cross-curricular learning enables you to follow what your children love. To follow what your children love. Again, my name is Brandy Champeau. I encourage you, head over to exploringexpression.com. We have curriculum for pre-K all the way through adults, things to help you and help your children just become the very best expression of yourselves. And if you have any questions, definitely get in touch with us. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, and you can always email me at brandy@exploringexpression.com. Thank you.